Café and Networking Podcast promotes entrepreneurs, startups, authors, business experts throughout the world. Available on all major podcast platforms. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American known as the King of Networking, connecting people and speaking from my studio in Vinhedo, São Paulo, Brazil. And today we talk with Anthony Day. He's joining us from York in the United Kingdom. Anthony Day is a sustainability professional who writes and speaks on sustainability. Since 2014, he has published the Sustainable Futures Report. That's his weekly podcast and blog, focusing on a wide range of sustainability issues. So, Anthony, what's the key climate issue this week?
Tom, thanks for having me on the show. The key climate question this week and every week is net zero. In other words, how are we going to stop adding carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases to the atmosphere? Because we need to get to the point where the amount we are adding is zero. So how do we get there? The answer is that we must stop burning fossil fuels. Now, carbon dioxide, CO2, it's a perfectly natural and pretty harmless gas. We breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants absorb carbon dioxide. When plants die and rot or are burnt, that CO2 is released into the atmosphere and then it is taken up again by new plants, and so it goes around. The problem is that when we burn fossil fuels like coal or oil or natural gas, we're creating additional CO2 from the carbon that's been locked up underground for millions of years. And we've been putting more CO2 into the atmosphere than the natural cycles can absorb. Well, if CO2 is natural and harmless, what's wrong with that?
Right.
It's the greenhouse effect. Mm-hmm. CO2 is acting as a blanket around the Earth. It's trapping the heat from the sun that would normally be radiated back out into space. Extra heat, even of very few degrees, can have a disproportionate effect. For example, the Arctic and Antarctic ice caps are melting very slowly.
We've seen that recently with big chunks just falling
off. You're right. Yes. Well, they're melting very slowly, but they're melting very much faster than ever before. Mm-hmm. And this is raising sea levels, which means that when there are storms, there is much more water to be pushed around, so floods can be bigger and last longer. Now, think not just about extra heat, but think of it as extra energy.
Right.
Energy that drives the weather systems. That's why we've been seeing unusually violent weather, and all too often we're hearing about a month's rain falling in an afternoon.
No, and that's everywhere. That's here in Brazil. That's worldwide. It's just more and highly concentrated volumes of rain.
Exactly. And if all that rain falls in a different place from usual, then other places get no rain at all.
Right.
Now, you don't need me to tell you about drought in California and how the wildfires have got more frequent and intense.
Right.
And the same goes for Australia. And we've even seen wildfires and excessive temperatures in Canada and Siberia and inside the Arctic Circle. Drought and floods can both damage crops and kill livestock, and that threatens global food supplies. So, what can we do to cut the carbon and get to net zero? Three major users of fossil fuels, which are the main creators of carbon emissions, are electricity generation, vehicles and transport, and home heating. We can replace coal and natural gas power stations with wind turbines, solar panels, and nuclear, although that's a little bit controversial. We can replace our cars with electric cars, but that only works if we've cleaned up the electricity supply first.
Right.
We can heat our homes with electric heat pumps, but again, that only makes a difference if we're getting clean electricity. Until we do all that, and that's going to take time and money, the best course is to use less. Walk or cycle where you can, turn the heating down a couple of degrees, and maybe buy an electric car.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's going to be the future. Now, in the UK, and I've seen, we've been following that, the use of more environmental friendly energy generation, wind specifically, has caught on. Many of those same manufacturers and companies are bringing that technology to Brazil. Brazil's starting to use that. So is the change, but is that change fast enough or not?
Well, a lot of people would say no, but if you say no, then you're you might as well give up. No, we've got to believe that we can do it.
It's in the right direction.
Yeah, we're all going in the right direction. Yeah. Can I just take a moment to tell you a bit more about the Sustainable Futures podcast?
Mm-hmm. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, sustainability isn't just about net zero and protecting ourselves against the climate crisis, although that's key, obviously. I also look at how we protect the world we live in, because we need to be aware of pollution and what we can do to avoid it.
Right.
And another problem is resources like the rare metals that go into smartphones and computers and wind turbines and electric cars and solar panels, and in fact into every product that contains electronics, and most of them do these days, don't
Everything is, right?
Yeah. Now, many of these rare metals are in short supply, and they'll be worked out in a few years. And that's why reduce, reuse, recycle is increasingly important, because we cannot afford to waste.
So what I try to do in my personal situation is just use my phone and use my electronic equipment as long as possible.
Yeah.
To get away from the fad of I always need the upgrade, always need the new thing coming out, when I can't even use what I've already had. So I think we have to re-educate ourselves at a personal level.
You're so right. Yes. And of course, if you want to upgrade your phone, you don't necessarily need to go for the very, very latest. You can get a refurbished one of a model that may be newer than the one you've already got.
Very good. Well, mine's been around for a while. It still works. So I say, wow, it works. Keep it.
Yeah, I agree. While it works. I mean, I do the same with my car.
I think that's back to everything. Obviously, follow the tendencies where things are changing. Now, to your report, your report does come out frequently, and so you're updating as things happen, right?
Yeah, it comes out every week. It comes out twice every week, in fact, because on the Wednesdays I do an interview, because I'm finding more and more people are coming to me and saying, we want to talk on the Sustainable Futures Report. Now, if I have an interview and I do all the rest, it just makes it far too long for people to listen to. So on Wednesdays I do an interview, and on Fridays I do a general sort of magazine program.
Okay. But there's always something new to talk about, even though
there's always something new.
Always talking about the old thing, but something is always up to date.
Yeah, I may not know what it is until a couple of days before, but yeah, you're right. There's always something to do.
Maybe when we wake up, and like you just said, you just saw snow. So every day, as you know, Anthony Day, every day's a new day. But in your case, every day's the same day, right?
Well, yeah.
Very good. Well, Anthony, I want to thank you for sharing our time, all right, with our audience and updating it. And I'm sure we'll be following more and getting back to talking to you in the future.
Well, thanks, Tom. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with your audience today.
And for our audience, you can find more information about Anthony Day, and it's Anthony, Anthony. The last name is Day, D-A-Y. You find him on LinkedIn, and you also find him at the sustainablefutures.report. Sustainablefutures.report. And find and update yourself weekly or bi-weekly, as he just mentioned. Café Networking is brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information on them on their website, focusmi.com. Thanks for listening. Until the next time here at Café and Networking Podcast.